The string quartet faded into a gentle hum. My brother Ryan stood, clinking his glass with a grin that mirrored our father's. A hush fell over the wedding reception. I, Clara, sat at the family table, my hands folded tightly in my lap. My father, Charles Ross, rose, his chest puffed out. He cleared his throat, the sound echoing in the grand hall. As father of the groom, he began, his voice booming, "I'd like to propose a toast." He placed a hand on Ryan's shoulder. "To my son, Ryan. Finally, a son who makes us proud." The room erupted in laughter and applause. Cameras flashed, capturing my father's triumphant smile. I felt every eye flicker toward me, the disappointing daughter. My smile was a fragile, frozen thing. Inside, a familiar, childhood ache tore open. I focused on my napkin, fighting back the sting of tears. The applause died down. My mother, Diane, patted my hand under the table, a useless, fluttering gesture. Then, the bride, Lydia, stood up. She looked radiant, but her smile was tight. She picked up her microphone. "Thank you for those kind words, Charles," she said, her voice clear and steady. She turned her gaze directly to me. "But before we continue, I need to thank someone else. I need to thank Clara. None of this would have been possible without her." A wave of confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. My heart hammered against my ribs. What was she doing? All the attention, hot and uncomfortable, shifted from my father's proud face to my shocked one. The camera swiveled, and I was trapped in their blinding glare. My mind flashed back. I was 12, showing my father a science project I'd aced. "Very nice, dear," he'd said, not looking up from Ryan's Little League stats. At 16, when I got into a great college, his only comment was, "Good. You'll need a solid degree to find a husband." Ryan was the future, the heir. I was just the daughter, a temporary resident until I married. I left at 18, built a quiet career in marketing, my successes met with a polite, "That's nice, Clara." I was an afterthought. Always. The present snapped back. The toast ended. People began chatting again, the awkward moment passing. As I stood to escape to the restroom, my father leaned close. His breath was warm against my ear. "Don't you dare make this about you," he whispered, his voice a low, threatening growl. I fled to the opulent restroom, my hands shaking. I leaned against the cool marble counter, taking deep breaths. The door opened softly. It was Lydia. Her expression was unreadable. Without a word, she slipped a small, folded piece of thick stationery into my hand. "Read it." "Alone," she murmured, and then she was gone. I locked myself in a stall, my heart pounding. I unfolded the note. The elegant script was unmistakably hers. It read, "Meet me tomorrow morning at the Daily Grind Cafe on Elm Street. 10 a.m. There's something you need to know about Ryan." I stared at the words, my mind reeling. What could she possibly need to tell me about my own brother? The cafe was quiet the next morning. Lydia sat in a corner booth, 2 steaming mugs between us. She looked tired, the wedding day glow gone. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice barely a whisper. She took a shaky breath. "Clara, Ryan only proposed to me because of my family's business connections. Harper Enterprises." My blood ran cold. "I found messages on his laptop," she continued, tears welling in her eyes. "Between him and your father. They were mocking my family. Talking about how useful we'd be." I reached out, stunned. I knew they were proud, but this was cruel. She looked at me, her gaze intense. "They mentioned you too, Clara. But not kindly." Lydia pulled out her phone, her finger swiping quickly. She turned the screen toward me. It was a screenshot of a text conversation between my father and Ryan. My father had written, "At least one of us married up. Clara's hopeless. Still in that dead-end job. A lost cause." Ryan's reply was a simple laughing emoji. The words blurred on the screen. A lost cause. Hopeless. My own family. My hands trembled so violently I had to set my coffee down. I felt sick. Lydia placed her hand over mine. You helped me get that internship years ago, the one that started my career. You believed in me when no one else did, she whispered. Let me help you now. Help me how? I asked, my voice hollow. Lydia's eyes gleamed with a new intensity. My family is launching a new venture. A nonprofit called the Rise Again Foundation. It helps women who've taken career breaks to care for families, to re-enter the workforce with training and support. It was a cause I was passionate about, one I'd mentioned to her in passing. We need a leader, she said. Someone with a heart for this, with marketing savvy, and with integrity. I want you to be the executive director. My breath caught. It was the opportunity of a lifetime, everything I'd ever wanted but was always told I wasn't leadership material for. But the unspoken truth hung in the air. Accepting would mean going directly against my father's wishes, and potentially, competing with his own corporate interests. I didn't sleep that night. The hurt from the texts warred with the thrilling possibility of Lydia's offer. By sunrise, my decision was made. I was done being the afterthought. I called my bland corporate job and resigned. I met with Lydia and her parents, who were wonderfully supportive and horrified by their son-in-law's behavior. I signed the contract. I was the executive director of the Rise Again Foundation. The first call came 2 days later. It was my father. His voice was cold steel. Clara, I've heard about this little nonprofit venture. You're making a huge mistake. You have no idea what you're getting into. The sabotage started subtly. A key vendor we were negotiating with suddenly stopped returning our calls. Then, a major corporate sponsor who had been very interested withdrew their offer, giving a vague excuse about shifting priorities. My small team was confused. It feels like someone is pulling strings behind the scenes, my assistant said, frustrated. I knew exactly who it was. The final straw was an email from an anonymous account. The subject line was, domain issue? The body was empty except for a link. With a sinking feeling, I clicked it. The link took me to a website that looked almost exactly like the one we were building for Rise Again. But the text was a cruel parody. Welcome to Rise Again, it read. A foundation for hopeless causes and family disappointments. Led by Clara Ross, a professional failure. My father's company had secretly purchased our preferred domain name, .org instead of .com, and redirected it to this mocking site. My team gathered around my screen, their faces a mixture of anger and shock. I felt the heat of humiliation, but then a cold, sharp clarity settled over me. I looked at my team. Two can play this game, I said, my voice steady and cold. And I've had a lifetime to learn the rules. I started gathering evidence. I documented every cancelled meeting, every withdrawn offer. I tracked down the vendor, who reluctantly admitted he'd been pressured by a larger firm. I saved the mocking website and traced the domain registration to a shell company linked to my father's lawyer. I consulted a sharp, no-nonsense attorney named Amanda Cruz. We have enough for a lawsuit, she said. But lawsuits are messy, public, and expensive. I shook my head. I didn't want a legal victory. I wanted poetic justice. Amanda nodded. Understood. By the way, I heard a rumor. Your father's company is about to announce a massive new partnership. My ears perked up. With who? I asked. She smiled thinly. Harper Enterprises. Lydia's family. The press release is scheduled for next week. The leverage was perfect. I met Lydia for lunch immediately. The Harper deal with my father, I said. We need to stop it. Lydia didn't even blink. Consider it done, she replied. She made a quick call to her father, the CEO. The partnership signing was discreetly postponed indefinitely, citing internal reviews. My father, oblivious, was still boasting to his board about the imminent deal. I looked at Lydia. What if we let him announce it first? Let him stand in front of everyone and claim his victory. A slow, knowing smile spread across Lydia's face. She understood perfectly. Then we pulled the rug out, she finished. The setup went flawlessly. My father, confident and arrogant, leaked news of the finalized Harper Enterprises partnership to the local business journal. The story ran on the front page. Ross Industries soars with Harper Alliance. I read the headline over my morning coffee, a grim smile on my face. His phone must have been ringing off the hook with congratulations from investors. His ego was at its peak. He was celebrating a deal that was already dead. Meanwhile, Lydia and I were in my office, finalizing our own press release with our communications team. We added one specific, devastating detail. The day after my father's triumphant leak, our press release hit the wires. The headline, Harper Enterprises backs new nonprofit, Rise Again Foundation, appoints Clara Ross as director. It detailed our mission and my role. Then came the killer sentence. This new initiative aligns with Harper's refreshed ethical focus. As such, all pending negotiations with Ross Industries have been permanently withdrawn. I imagined my father reading it. He would have been at his usual power lunch at the downtown club, showing off the journal article. His phone would buzz with a news alert. His fork, full of steak, would have frozen halfway to his mouth. The backlash was instant and brutal. The Business Journal ran a follow-up story titled Ethical Concerns Sink Ross-Harper Deal. Investors were furious, calling my father demanding explanations. The value of his company's stock began to plummet. My phone rang. It was Ryan. His voice was a snarl of fury. What have you done? Are you trying to ruin Dad's legacy? You've destroyed everything he built. I held the phone calmly, listening to his rage. When he finally paused for breath, I replied, my voice quiet but firm. I'm not ruining his legacy, Ryan. I'm just finally living mine. The Ross family retaliated with whispers. Old family friends suddenly became distant. I heard through the grapevine that my father was telling people I was unstable, vindictive, that I had a grudge against the family. It was a classic smear campaign. I started to feel the social isolation. Then, Lydia came to my office. I have something you need to see, she said, pulling out her phone. She played an audio recording from a recent family dinner at my parents' house. It was my father's voice, loud and clear. Of course I sabotaged her little charity. She needed to be taken down a peg. She can't compete with me. I had the evidence. The recording was a smoking gun. But leaking it myself would make me look vengeful. I needed a third party. I remembered a journalist, Ben Carter, who had written hard-hitting pieces on corporate ethics. I created a secure, anonymous email account. I sent him the recording, along with a few documents showing the domain name sabotage. I wrote only one line, this might be of interest for your reporting on unethical business practices. I didn't need to do anything else. A few days later, my assistant buzzed me. Clara, there's a Ben Carter on the line from the Business Chronicle. He says it's urgent. I smiled. The trap was sprung. The story broke with the force of a bomb. The headline, Ross Industries CEO caught sabotaging daughter's nonprofit. The article featured quotes from the recording and details of the domain name scheme. The business world was appalled. More investors fled. Several key board members resigned in protest. Ross Industries was in freefall. Amid the chaos, my personal email chimed. The sender was Ryan. The subject line was a single, desperate word, please, can we talk? I met him in a public park. He looked haggard, a shell of the proud groom. Clara, I'm so sorry, he began, his words tumbling out. The texts. I was just a kid. I just went along with Dad to keep the peace. You know how he is. He pleaded with me to talk to Lydia, to convince her to give him another chance. He said he loved her. I listened silently, watching his desperate performance. When he finished, I asked the one question that mattered. My voice was quiet but clear. Ryan, be honest. Would you be here, would you be apologizing, if you hadn't lost everything? His face crumpled. The carefully constructed apology fell away, replaced by raw defeat. He broke down, sobbing right there on the park bench. He raised me to see everything as a transaction, he choked out. Love, marriage, family. It was all about performance, about winning. For the first time, I saw my brother not as a rival, but as another one of my father's victims. I felt a deep, aching pity for him. But pity wasn't forgiveness. I stood up. We both had choices, Ryan, I said softly. I just made mine a little later than you did. The fallout was total. Charles Ross was forced to resign as CEO of the company that bore his name. The remaining board sold off the assets. Ross Industries filed for bankruptcy within months. The proud patriarch gave one final, bitter interview, blaming his downfall on a vicious family betrayal. Then, the invitation came. My mother called, her voice fragile. Your father and I, we'd like to have dinner. To talk. To make peace. Lydia warned me immediately. Don't go, Clara. They'll never apologize. They just want to regain control. But I needed to see it for myself. The dinner was held at the family home, a place that had never felt like home. The air was thick with tension. My mother served the food with a nervous smile. My father barely looked at me. He spoke in circles, trying to gaslight me. You've always been so sensitive, Clara. You misinterpreted my actions. I was only trying to protect you. My mother chimed in, can't we just move on? For the family? I listened, saying nothing. Finally, my father scoffed, his pride still clinging on. What do you even have that we don't? A small-time charity? That was my cue. I reached into my bag and slid a plain white envelope across the polished mahogany table. My father picked it up with a condescending sneer. He pulled out the document inside. It was the official partnership contract between the Rise Again Foundation and Harper Enterprises. His eyes scanned the page, then stopped, widening in disbelief. He was staring at the clause that named the executive director and primary shareholder, Clara Ross. He saw the 7-figure funding commitment. The sneer melted away, replaced by a look of utter, defeated shock. He was speechless. I pushed my chair back and stood, looking down at the man who had always looked down on me. Pride, I said, my voice calm and clear, looks very different from this side of the table. Months passed. The Rise Again Foundation thrived. We helped hundreds of women regain their confidence and careers. I was featured in magazines, not as Charles Ross's daughter, but as a leader in my own right. Meanwhile, the Ross name faded into obscurity and bankruptcy records. One afternoon, my assistant said I had a visitor. It was my mother, standing in the doorway of my bright, modern office. She looked small and old. Tears streamed down her face. I was wrong, Clara, she whispered. I was so weak. I stayed silent for all those years. I failed you. The anger I held for her softened, but did not disappear. I forgave my mother that day, but on my terms. Forgiveness doesn't mean going back, I told her. It means we move forward differently. Cut to the first Rise Again annual gala. The ballroom was filled with light and hope. I walked onto the stage, to the same kind of podium my father had stood at during Ryan's wedding. I looked out at the crowd of strong, resilient women and their supporters. I saw Lydia, beaming with pride. I raised my glass. My voice was soft but carried to every corner of the room. To every daughter, I said, every sister, every woman who was ever told she wasn't enough. May you find your strength. May you rise again. The crowd rose to their feet in a thunderous, heartfelt applause. Justice. Dignity. Closure.